Hello everyone, I am the Constant Way, and today we're wrapping up our 5-video series on heroes by class with enhancers and controllers. Now you can see all 33 heroes available at launch on the right, grouped by what I consider their primary class. As we've mentioned before, classes don't do anything mechanically, they just help give you an idea of the kind of role a hero will likely play on the tabletop. As such, there's no mechanical requirement to take heroes from any given class, but you'll often find that bringing heroes from various classes gives you a more diverse toolbox to help you win the game. Today we're looking at enhancers and controllers. Now all of these heroes bring a fairly unique set of abilities to the table, so we're going to walk through generally why you'd take them, what they do, and when to consider bringing them in or out of God, and of course the special synergies and cautions for each. Starting with our 3 enhancers/healers in Bastian, Cradol, and Isabel, before moving on to our more control-oriented heroes of Aria and Gendris. Now, Bastion. Why would you take Bastion? Well, Bastion brings an offensive buff to lift your damage floor or ceiling. He also brings healing, fate-free in Tauren, and with his Soul Harvest stat of 5, can function as a backup Soulgazer free warband. Now, he's got a fairly squishy stat line, given that most of his abilities have just a 2 hex reach, and you want to place him just behind your front line to maximize what he can reach and his abilities that he uses. So the sort of standard human stats of Agi 4, 15 health, no res, can end up getting him into trouble if you're not careful. His personal offense, even though he does have that 7 mag stat, is fairly poor due to his low damage tracks, 1, 2, 4. But don't forget he has point blank, so if he's engaged, he can actually use his magic blast against the enemy engaging him, which is slightly better than his sword thanks to the 7 mag, as long as you don't need that Calming Waters combat maneuver to remove conditions from friendly models. Now, if you're looking to get just a little bit more offense out of him, look at his suggestion ability. If he's nearby, say, a monster who typically has very high offensive stats, an enemy Thrommel or a Thorgar, or other attacks that can inflict conditions like poison or knockdown to help you out, consider using his suggestion ability rather than making an attack directly. Like I said, generally speaking, you're bringing him for Heroic Ballad. This is a little AoE aura buff around him that is particularly helpful for heroes that either make lots of attacks or have really high damage potential as long as you roll well, such as Brock, Fazil, Stariel, or Ashel. Now, in Tauren specifically, Prayer of Health is where he ends up making a lot of his money. The Tauren Avatar bonus allows him to ignore the fate cost of Prayer of Health, which can add up to a whole lot of fate-free healing over the course of 4 or 5 turns in a game. His kit's fairly complete at level 1, and so you don't really need to prioritize getting him levels, but he does get 2 solid fate abilities if he does manage to pick up a level or 2. Heroism, which is a friendly buff that allows him to grant +1 damage to basic attacks during that target's next activation, can open up kills, particularly on, say, an effigy, where normally they just wouldn't have existed. And then his level 3 Time Bender, honestly, is kind of for himself, because if he ends up getting to level 3, that usually means he's got 2 souls on him and has a big old bullseye painted on his back, so he can just pop Time Bender on himself and make sure he's going to hold on to those souls. Otherwise, of course, if you have a different hero that is more important or in critical danger right now, obviously you can use it there too. Like I said, in God, he's worth including in Tauren, really just for that free healing, but also buffing the attack dice pools of the various heroes in Tauren. There can be some real nasty ones when you're rolling lots of dice, like we mentioned, Astariel, Ashel, but even Zim, Aria, Thrommel even, your tanks that can sort of raise up that damage floor when you don't have a whole lot of, say, raw melee damage from the Tauren champions. And he can also fill outside of Tauren this hit fixing role with just more of a splash of the healing utility that it's bringing. Just make sure that the rest of the warband can protect him, since he's fairly squishy if he gets focused. Next up is Cradol. So why play Cradol? Well, you're either playing Shadow Orb users like Rakir and Zarin, and you want more movement tricks, or you want fate-free healing and have a tanky enough front line to keep damage coming in slowly while Cradle powers up her mist tokens. Likely want to be very melee focused because literally none of her abilities function if she's not either damaging things in melee herself or at least within 2 hexes of her friendly or enemy target that your other heroes are damaging. Now, looking at her stats, like Fazil and Zimgagrak, she is undead, so she cannot harvest souls herself, but does have that Soul Harvest 5 to more reliably consume souls to give her levels and deal out automatic healing and damage when she does that. Otherwise, her base stat line is generally fairly poor. This is mostly due to that 1-2-4 damage track, which kind of sucks since her Shadow Mist tokens get generated when you damage something. So if you're going into, say, a Res 2 target, you have to crit to generate a Mist token, and that's not very good. But she does have dual wield, so if you're not going into Res, she can make a lot of attacks and add up that damage over time. And also has Mark Target, so that she can at least focus one target and be baseline Mel 7 against them, which again can be really helpful. Her personal durability comes from actually a lot of little things that can add up. So you can see that although she's Agi 3, base Minotaur Agi, basically, she's an undead Minotaur, not technically a Minotaur, but anyway, you could see. She does have Res 1. She also has Regeneration 1, and also Leech 1 from being undead. So over time, over the course of a lot of different attacks, these can add up to a significant amount of healing for her. And she also has her Shadow Wraith combat maneuver that lets her heal herself or a friendly model within 2 hexes. So speaking of her big mechanic, Shadow Mist, that's currently unique to her, where if Cradol or a friendly model damages an enemy within 2 hexes of Cradol with a basic attack, she gains a Mist token, which she can later use to fuel the rest of her abilities, but then go away at the end of her activation. You want to tend to hold her to activate later into the turn so that friendly heroes can build up Mist tokens for her. Allies will have taken damage so that when she activates, she gets to heal them with Shadow Mist, or she can Shadow Door someone back to safety. Level 2, Shadow Cleanse, is actually a really powerful ability because it lets you remove tokens or templates. This could be a condition on your hero like Burn or Knockdown, a token on an enemy hero like Donargar's Stone Form, for example, or a template like Marcus's Ice Wall or Wild Growth, or Gendris's Wild Growth. Her level 3 Shadow Shield lets her grant temporary health, so she's definitely getting a lot more utility as she levels up, and ways to spend those Mist tokens. Now she can also, of course, like we've mentioned, place and use Shadow Orbs to reposition herself or set up for Rakir or Zarin, or port somebody back to those Shadow Orbs with Shadow Door. Now I would primarily take her in God, as Borellan could use the healing, and especially the Shadow Door sort of ambulance ability after you charge in on the effigy power turn. Maybe you overextend it a little, well, Cradol can pull him back. Now Krognar, of course, she pairs well with Rakir and Zarin, and gives your warband just that extra mobility. She can also provide healing to Kayn, who's also a Krognar champion who hurts himself or his friends with Blood Pact, so that could be nice. Like I mentioned, she synergizes well with durable heroes like tanks that can keep incoming damage slow and steady, and other Shadow Orb users, and also heroes with multiple attacks that can generate multiple Mist tokens for her per action, like Skull, Drogoth, or Brock. Now, all that said, she really does want setup items that can help her damage, like, say, Vorpal Blade, Hunter's Knife, or Armor Shredder if your opponent has any sort of res. She also wants protection, like we said, to keep allies and herself alive, to buy time for her to power up with Mist tokens. And you might expect that she really doesn't like Burn, because all of her abilities are about healing, and if you're on fire, you can't do that. So watch out for that. Next up, Isabel, the avatar of Ista. Why would you take her? Well, you're playing Ista probably, and you want to play the Paladin, but she brings a good Soul Harvest stat on a semi-durable melee healer stat line that can flex into either more healing or a decent offense if you need it. So looking across her base stats, she does have that Soul Harvest 5, which is great. Agi 4 Res 1, which is slightly above average, and you can see her max health starts at 16, which is good, so she's a tanky human. She unfortunately has Mel 6, which is not great for her damage track with just 2, 3, 4. But you'll see that she gains +1 damage against enemies that can apply Curse, which right now is Cruel, Fazil, and Masuzi, and gets another +1 damage if you roll the J for a Smite on your attack using her Smite combat maneuver, and you don't need a push. Now she's a bit of a medic, with her Lay on Hands, Mass Restoration, and the Ista Restoration Potion, and become even more of a medic, maybe even upgrading to an ambulance if you go down the holy path. When she levels up, you can choose, like Skull, she chooses a level up path, either Holy or Retribution. And if she chooses Holy, she gets the Divine Intervention and Holy Aura level abilities. Divine Intervention works sort of like Brock's Heroic Destiny ability, that the first time a friendly hero within 2 hexes of her is reduced to 0 health, instead of immediately dying, she heals them for 1. It's important to call out that she cannot benefit from it herself. And then her Holy Aura level 3 ability is just sort of an aura that she chooses to activate, and friendly models within 2 hexes of her, when they activate, immediately remove 1 condition and heal 2. So if you're really clumped up and your enemy's bombarding you with conditions and chip damage, that can be worth it. And remember, it doesn't cost an action, so if you've got the fate, might as well pop it. Now, her Retribution path is mostly for Mel 7. You get a situational diceless attack in Holy Blast that you can use against summon models like skeletons, undead heroes, or monsters, just to bloop, deal 6 damage. D6 damage. You can spend a fate to upgrade it to D6 plus 3, so potentially up to 9 if you roll well on that 1d6, but it's a bit of a gamble. And at her level 3, she gets her actionless, just a fate, damage and knockdown AO ability in Thunderous Strike. Now they're both a little bit swingy in terms of dice, but it can work out in your favor if you're fate wealthy, or if just facing down a bunch of undead. She does like Marcus's, in terms of synergies, she likes Marcus's protective stance that brings her res up to 2, making her Agi 4 res 2. And Minotaurs love her Mass Restoration and Holy Aura abilities that help either remove or keep off burn conditions, which really impairs their regeneration. Mass Restoration is especially effective against heroes that can inflict multiple conditions, or conditions across multiple heroes, like Ashel with his Bombard, Maltique, who can do pin and stun, Nias with her Poison Cloud, Frommel with his stun and knockdown, Alandir with his AoE burn, or Zimgagrak with his AoE freeze. Now, you don't often take her outside of Ista, but she is worth considering in any warband that wants to go really tanky, like Grohl or Tomas. The main caveat with Tomas specifically is that Fazil and Zimgagrak can't benefit from 3 of her sort of healing abilities: Lay on Hands, Divine Intervention, and Holy Aura, so watch out for that. No real cautions to note for her. Just know that she kind of needs to be close to the action to have an impact, and position accordingly. Now, when you pop your, if you're playing in Ista and you pop your FG power, she gains the avatar bonus of being able to permanently gain Fly and Nibble, so she can kind of go where she needs to, either offensively or to fly over enemies that go rescue someone who maybe dove a little too deep, which is some unique movement that's cool for her. But yeah, otherwise, no real cautions to call out for Ista. Moving on into Control. We start with the demon Siren of Ecstasy, Aria. Now, why take Aria? You're mostly taking her for her Allure ability. This is an action that lets you advance a model within 5 hexes, their movement forward towards Aria, and that lets you get on backline heroes like Soulgazers, like Maltique, like Ashel, while she's bringing just a generally flexible suite of other abilities that let her play in that mid to front line herself. So she can move up, get the allure on, and not really be in all that bad of a situation to get counterpunched for. So looking at her stats, she's got high agility, in that 5 agility, decent HP, sort of human standard, starting at 15, and gains a bunch of defensive options when she's leveling up. Like Demon, she gets to choose one of the abilities to gain when she levels up. So she can go into Duplicate Self, which is a really strong personal defensive ability, or if you're facing down a particularly condition-focused warband or a hero that relies on a condition to deal damage, like, say, Rakir's Poison or Istariel's Burn, she can just choose to become immune to it. It's not a problem for her anymore. She can, of course, be a backup Soulgazer with Soul Harvest of 4. It's not bad. It's better when you have, say, a friend standing by. but that's definitely an option you should always consider with her. She has okay melee with some poison setup potential, so looking at you, Rakir, for friends. She's got a good magic of 7 on a big ol' symphonic attack. You'll see that that's a 2-action attack, but the damage track is 3, 4, 6, and you look over at that Siren Song combat maneuver. If you land 2S, enemy damaged by symphonic attack suffers knockdown and stun, and if you roll a J and the enemy was damaged, the next symphonic attack only costs 1 action. This is pretty big because if she gets to just stand and shoot her symphonic attack and then she rolls a knockdown and a stun and a J, she gets to fire it again. The main catch here, of course, is it's fairly short range, only reach 4. It's not reach 5. And since it's a magic attack, you can never aim to increase that mag. It's always going to be that flat 7 unless you buy her a Ring of Power. And you're using all of your actions, basically. You're committing. You might walk up once and shoot, and you're just rolling the dice and hoping you roll well. At Mag 7, shooting into an Ag 4 hero, you're only getting 3 dice. If they're engaged, you only get 2 dice. It's not likely that you're going to roll that Siren Song combat maneuver in the first place, and really unlikely that you're going to roll a J in with that as well. So it's a little situational. It's better if you've got additional setup like knockdown to take advantage of it. But if you do, or your dice just go hot and you get lucky, it can be pretty devastating if you end up getting to use it. Also, considering her personal output, if you want, you can level up into her suggestion ability, like we talked about with Bastian, which can be incredibly potent if there's, say, an enemy Thrommel, Thorgar, or monsters available to make those attacks. But the main reason that you're bringing her is for her unique control tech, which first and foremost is Allure. It's 1 action, no dice roll, nothing they can do about it, that just lets you pull in a hero. You probably want to do it to a hero that's already activated so that they can't just back up after she does it. And then you just get to dive in. Since they're now deeper into your front lines, you're not having to overextend to get that kill, and thus you're less vulnerable to a counter kill. So it's a great setup ability for high damage dealers like, say, a Zonia or a Thorgar or a Brock or whoever to get those kills without getting punished for it. Also, for her control, she has that sleep level up ability, which is kind of a neat niche ability. But honestly, you're probably taking her other level up abilities as they're just a little bit more consistently useful or relevant, and also don't cost anything. Looking at her gods, she doesn't have a lot of specific god synergies to benefit from. Girl, of course, she likes having a Thorgar coming up behind an Allure, and she certainly doesn't mind the bonus health from the Nature Shield. She could get the Staff of Girl, but again, her melee presence isn't all that imposing, so probably not. In Tauren tends to play a ranged game, so alluring enemies closer isn't usually ideal. You can use it to pull enemies off of, say, Meltique or Zimigrak, who to disengage them without needing to roll any dice. But she also only has regen 1, so if she wants to take advantage of the Tauren effigy power, she's going to be ending up hurting herself a fair amount without a whole lot of ways to recover that health. So it can be a bit risky to use, and I actually prefer taking her out of God in most cases. I use her in my Borellan Warband, just for allure, so that I can charge in, smash things without giving up counter kills. But you can consider her really in any warband that has a really strong but kind of short range counterpunch. So moving on to probably my favorite hero in the game, Gendris. Gendris is a powerful jack of all trades that extends the threat and survivability of your melee heroes with her control abilities, while also being able to personally contribute using her Lightning Bolt and her Soul Harvest stat. You can see that she's got that Minotaur stat line. She is bringing Soul Harvest 5 again, which is great for that soul gazing, and also has a Res 1. She's got a good magic stat of 7. and just 6 on her melee, but she does have reach 2 on her melee, which is a uniquely powerful ability right now that allows you to essentially frontline if you engage the hero that is on the front line at 2 hexes away. She's engaging them. They're not engaging her. They also can't target her with a charge because she's already engaged with them. You can't charge something that you're engaged with. And so her holding them at a distance there helps mitigate how they're going to come into you or the dice they'll get from then having to just walk and attack rather than being able to charge. She also can use her control abilities like Wild Growth at level 1 for a Fate, which places down a forest template within 3 hexes. Now that's not completely within, so if just 1 hex of Wild Growth is within 3 hexes of her, the other hexes in that forest template can extend beyond, which is pretty sweet, to grant invisibility, block line of sight, etc., etc. And then when she levels up, she gets Hold Person for just 1 action to target an enemy within 3 hexes, cannot perform an advance or charge action until the end of their next activation unless they remove it by spending 1 fate. This can be a really potent way to either tax your opponent fate, or they don't have that fate or really want to spend it elsewhere, make a hero completely useless for 1 action. Really strong ability. Once she starts getting levels, keep your eyes peeled for opportunities to use Hold Person. Like we mentioned, with her Reach 2 being really relevant, also Find a Path. So a lot of monsters, turn 1, are just out of charge range of the standard movement 3 plus 2 for the charge, 5 hex threat range. A lot of them are 6 hexes away, and so you would need to normally advance and then charge to get onto that monster. With Gendris, she herself having that Reach 2 threatens 6 hexes on the charge, so she could then charge that monster, push them 1 hex closer into the range of the hero you actually want to go in to get that monster kill on. Or she can use Find a Path on the hero that you want to increase the threat range to increase their movement by 1 and give them Pathfinder if there's a wall in the way or something like that, so that they can directly charge onto the monster. Really increases the reliability of those turn 1 monster kills for you, which is pretty cool. Her Lightning Leap can do just a disgusting amount of damage if you're, especially if you're running in Gruul, because the Avatar bonus in Gruul takes her Lightning Leap combat maneuver, which is where if an enemy takes damage from the lightning bolt attack, another enemy within 2 hexes is dealt the same amount in true damage. That becomes a 1S on after you pop the FG power in Gruul. And that essentially means she can shoot that Magic 7. Let's say you're just rolling, 3 dice, you land a solid and an S, deal 3 damage to your original target, and then 3 damage to a nearby enemy within 2 hexes as true damage. So if it's a Marcus or a Thrommel with 2 res, doesn't matter, they're taking that 3 damage. This can add up a lot. She shoots 3 times. Let's say she just solids and lightning leaps every single time. 3, 3, 3, 9 damage on your original target, 9 damage on your other target. You just dealt 18 damage just rolling solids in a maneuver after you shoot. It can get gross real fast, so look out for those opportunities. Additionally, her level 3 elemental command lets her summon a Terra. Now, this Terra is a slightly weaker version of the Terra monster, but it still does have Hurl and Rock Blast for knockdown, for more sort of offensive setup. And also keep in mind, you can walk forward, shoot, and then summon Terra, who can then shoot to kill an effigy and drop a whole truckload of damage onto an effigy suddenly. Again, if she advances, shoots, lands a solid on an effigy for 2 damage, summons Terra, Terra then shoots the effigy, lands a crit, 7 down to 6 damage, you just dealt 2 souls worth of damage onto an effigy, and there's really not a lot that your opponent could do about it. So that's really strong. We already mentioned the absurd amount of control that she gets from Wild Growth, Hold Person, and Terra's Knockdown. She tends to, when we're looking at synergies, tends to thrive in sort of melee death balls thanks to her Reach 2, causing or giving you additional gang ups or distractions on enemies who want to engage your friends, and prevents her from being charged by heroes she's engaging from 2 hexes away. Main caution I have for her is don't block your own line of sight with wild growth. Make sure that you're gonna either use hold person or shoot your lightning bolt before you put down the forest and then put up your screen. Um, and I think she is at her most powerful in Gruul. But just the breadth of her toolkit and the usefulness, I think merits inclusion in any god. I'd personally take her in just about any warband that isn't exclusively ranged focus. Um, but even in a ranged focus list, her control abilities can help keep those backline heroes safe. It's pretty cool. So that's the last 5 heroes in our hero summary. If you want a healer, look at Bastian, Cradol, or Isabel. If you want some control, look at Aria and Gendris. Bastian brings dice fixing. Gendris brings melee dice fixing. Aria and Cradol bring some movement tricks. And Bastian, Gendris, and Isabel also all bring strong Soul Harvest stats tacked up as backup Soulless, Soul Gazers, Soul Masters, Soul Harvesters. Hopefully that's a helpful overview. That's a wrap on our hero overview series. Let me know what other types of videos you'd like to see. I've got some thoughts on like general gameplay strategy and tactics, maybe walking through maps and how to unpack and turn one moves, that sort of thing. Talking about some of my favorite warbands. I mentioned that Brolin, Gendris, and Aria warband that I really like. Always fun to deep dive into some warbands. And I could also share some stats that I've collected from the online leagues that we've been running and playing on Vassal online since, July 2021. So we've got a healthy amount of stats there that's sometimes fun to look through. So let me know if there's any sort of content that you'd be interested in seeing. And if not, I will see you in the between.